I've recorded audio for this video so many times over the last few weeks, and each time I nearly finish, I find something new that I just have to add in. This is a video about Mary Blakley. It's got all the normal stuff I put in my previous videos, fake qualifications, bogus treatments, and supplement sales, but there's some pretty dark stuff too. There's accusations of child abuse and murder, dying patients, and an international cancer treatment scam. So what does Mary Blakley do? Well, she provides ultrasound scans, which she claims can detect cancer at the earliest stages. Mary likes to call herself Dr. Mary on account of supposedly having a PhD, and I've looked into this claim in some detail. On her Facebook page, she says she graduated from Almeda University. There's two problems here. Firstly, Almeda University was a diploma mill which issued degrees to anyone willing to pay in any subject they wanted. At least one degree was issued to a dog, and several public servants lost their jobs after fraudulently using these degrees to secure pay rises. The second problem is that Almeda University opened in 1997, so Mary can't possibly have graduated in 1975 like it says on her Facebook page. Mary makes a number of other improbable and contradictory claims. She says that she comes from Sweden and studied at the Karolinska Institute.
Okay, well, I'm from Europe, Karolinska Medical Institute.
She certainly doesn't sound Swedish. She also says she's worked for 30 years in the USA.
How long did you work in that cancer hospital
In America?
in the United States?
30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
Or sometimes it's 35 years in Sweden.
I did that for 35 years in Sweden.
Really?
And then came to America.
In a video uploaded just 9 years ago, there was no mention of any PhD at all.
I have a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration, a master's degree in specialty of ultrasound, certified in 3 countries.
And I've also seen her say that she's a doctorate in Britain. The details of her qualifications and history that you can find on her various websites never seem to really match up with what Mary says in person. For example, in some versions of her story you can read online she worked for just 15 years in Sweden. So things are starting to seem pretty confusing here, and whilst I was trying to figure this out, I received a message from someone called Frederick Floyd Blakley, who is Mary's husband. I'll play it for you now.
Incoming transmission.
Listen, you son of a bitch. What the fuck's your problem? You get in my face with that, I'll beat your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch.
Okay, so the message wasn't quite like that, but during my conversation with Mary's husband, he did call me a lying arsewipe and threatened to come after my punk ass legally. He repeatedly insisted that Mary not only has a PhD, but she has enough credits to have earned 4, and that her PhD has been signed by the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. As I've tried to explain in a previous video, there's no sense to this idea of earning more than 1 PhD. It's like passing your driving test twice. It won't make you any more qualified to drive, and I can't understand why anyone would think that the Secretary of State would sign a PhD either. After all, the Secretary of State is generally involved in diplomacy and foreign relations, not science or education. I'm going to put a full copy of the conversation in a document below so that anyone can read exactly what Mary's husband had to say in Mary's defense. I asked several times to see evidence for these claims, something like a certificate, graduation date, thesis subject, publication list, the name of Mary's supervisor, or any other details that might confirm the truth here, but I was sent nothing. One thing he did say, however, is that Mary did not earn her PhD in Sweden, which of course is rather strange given that she's made that claim on video. So the only thing that Fred managed to confirm was that his wife is a liar. Her qualifications and work history aren't the only things that seem to keep changing. Mary never seems to have settled on even the spelling of her own name. She's opened clinics as Mary Blakley, spelled B-L-A-K-L-E-Y, and Mary Blakeley, spelled B-L-A-K-E-L-E-Y. And sometimes she spells her first name with an E on the end, and other times it's just plain old Mary. Now, of course, the odd misspelling is to be expected, but when someone consistently alters the spelling of their own name on their own websites and promotional material, there's another explanation: fraud. And on the subject of names that keep on changing, Mary never seems to have decided on a single name for her business either. I've seen U Healthcare, Checkpoint Imaging, Health Scans for Life, Health Screenings for Life, Health Screens for Life, Colorado Health Screening, European Clinic, the Blakley Foundation, and I'm sure there are more. Okay, so I think it's normal for someone to change the name of their business. Perhaps it needs to be rebranded, but these frequent changes of names, often to very similar names, don't look like rebranding to me. What would be the point in changing from Health Scans for Life to Health Screens for Life, or Blakley to Blakeley for that matter, unless there's something that Mary is trying to hide? So I have a few theories about what's going on here. Firstly, it seems obvious to me that Mary is practicing medicine without a license. which is the technical term for pretending to be a doctor. I imagine this has led to some legal trouble, and I've seen some unsubstantiated comments to that effect. One comment on an old advert of hers says that she's been shut down in 3 states, but I can't find any court documents or local news reports to confirm this. I think it would make sense though, especially given Mary's propensity to move her clinics across state lines, which I guess might help her to evade the attention of the authorities. Another possible reason for these name changes is that Mary is trying to avoid the attention of unsatisfied customers. So who might these unsatisfied customers be? Well, there are a couple of complaints against her on the Better Business Bureau website. I'll leave a link below. But there are also some pretty scary reviews on Yelp. I'm going to read from some of them now. I've edited these reviews for brevity and clarity, but if you want to see the full unedited text, the link to the Yelp page is also below. So let's start with Richard. I had a health screening on June 9th. I was told I was in very good health for a 58-year-old man. Mary said I might have some calcified veins in my neck, so they sold me some medicine for $65 and told me it would take care of everything. On July 21st, I had a massive heart attack and had to have a quadruple bypass because all 4 of the veins around my heart were 80 to 90% blocked. The doctors at the hospital said I have no blockage in my veins in my neck. I think that health screens for life should be shut down before the information they give out kills someone. Anthony G has a pretty similar story. Scam, stay away. Went there for cancer screening. She said there is no cancer. 2 weeks later, I was in hospital for craniotomy to have a tumour removed. Perhaps this is the worst review of all. Catherine Berry writes, I went on the 7th of the 8th, 17 to get scanned. I wanted to use the scans to track my cancer. There were no red flags during the scan, and Dr. Mary was finding things like my kidney problem I already knew about. But then, at the end of the scan, she told me that I have terminal cancer. She told me about a Dr. Terry in the Philippines who can fry the cancer and has a cocktail that mops up the die-off. She told me I can't operate and I can't shrink this tumour because the die-off will kill me. They wanted $35,000 for the treatment. I did some research and spoke to other cancer patients. One widow I spoke to said that all but one person they knew from a Facebook group had died after going to the Philippines clinic, and that the recruiter for Dr. Terry is a well-known scam artist. I had a lot of hope going into this and had planned on going back to Dr. Mary every 3 months to track my progress. I'm leaving feeling scammed and violated. Please do your research. I'll link to a post on Cancer Compass that gives further details of this scam. Apparently Mary has sent over 34 patients to the Philippines. And I just want to pause and point something out here. There is nothing in Mary's education, training or experience that could ever give her the capacity, legally or illegally, to diagnose and stage someone's cancer with just an ultrasound machine. Even if Mary had a PhD in vascular physics like she says, that wouldn't make her an oncologist. How could she possibly know whether or not a tumour is operable or can be shrunk? It seems that Mary has a working relationship with this clinic in the Philippines, as they are apparently also sending patients to her for follow-up scans, and Mary is declaring them cancer-free even when they aren't. And this is where a few different threads converge, because the victim here, Catherine Berry, found out about Mary Blakley by watching the Chris Beat Cancer channel. She saw Chris interview Carla Camarillo, and it was through Carla's referral scheme that she went to Mary Blakley, who promptly tried to ship her off to the Philippines on a wild goose chase for a cure that would never happen. I've mentioned Carla Camarillo in 2 of my previous videos. Just to catch everyone up to speed, Carla refused conventional therapy for her breast cancer and used alternative medicines. At some point, she started receiving scans from Mary Blakley, who eventually told her that she was cancer-free. Carla was interviewed by Chris Wark, and she even featured in the film Cancer Can Be Killed. Unfortunately, soon after Carla's well-publicized miracle cure, which she used to promote Chris and Mary to other cancer patients for financial kickbacks, she died from her breast cancer. And this is the problem with someone like Chris just sharing information. One moment, Catherine is watching one of Chris's supposedly harmless interviews. The next, she's topless in the office of a fake doctor who will make an impossibly underqualified diagnosis to try and squeeze the last drop of cash out of her when she's at her most desperate. So at this point, I think it's pretty obvious that Mary's running a scam, and I got more interested in the Blakley family, especially after receiving that string of obscene messages from her husband. And Mary's business is very much a family affair. In this photo of a 2015 clinic opening, you can see Mary, her husband, her son-in-law, and her daughter, as well as the pair of giant scissors. I just want to make a quick point here. The practice of medicine is highly regulated, and this is partly because our doctors and healthcare professionals see us at our most vulnerable, and they learn details about us that are often very personal, and we even trust them with our children. In fact, Mary offers full body scans to children for free. ultrasound requires the probe to contact the skin, and if Mary does a full body scan as she claims, I imagine that would necessitate a fairly complete state of undress. So who exactly is being entrusted with your personal details, safety, and even your naked children? Well, you might be interested to learn that another of Mary's daughters who doesn't work in Mary's clinics has been in contact with me, and is adamant that both Mary and her husband Fred have been in prison for manufacturing and distribution of amphetamines. Now, I thought this accusation seemed quite far-fetched at the time, and it wasn't initially going to be in this video. Mary's daughter sent me an inmate number for Mary Blakley, and the record on the Bureau of Prisons confirms that a woman called Mary Blakley of about the right age was imprisoned about the time that Mary's daughter says she was. But there are probably a lot of Mary Blakeleys. However, just out of curiosity, I also decided to enter Fred Blakley into the Bureau of Prisons search, and to my surprise there is also a record for Fred Blakley, who was released around the same time. A closer look at their inmate numbers reveals something interesting. Mary and Fred Blakley received consecutive 5-digit unique numbers, and their 3-digit location identifier is the same, and I can only assume this means that they were sent to federal prison at the same time and the same place. I want to be clear here, there's nothing to conclusively say that this Fred and Mary are the same Fred and Mary Blakley currently operating a scam ultrasound clinic, and I don't know why these people went to federal prison, but it might help explain a common theme in Mary's stories. They always seem to involve some kind of absence and return. It's like Mary needs to have a good explanation for where she's been, and Sweden probably sounds a lot better than prison. This is my final theory on the name-changing confusion. Even Fred does this to some extent, often using his middle name Floyd as a forename, under which guise he messaged me on LinkedIn. So until someone can come up with something more convincing, we'll have to leave this prison sentence as an open question. Unfortunately for Fred, however, there is an altogether more gruesome story which isn't an open question at all. In 2003, Fred Blakley's cousin Michael was found guilty of raping and murdering a 16-month-old baby. An interesting detail of this case is that Michael accused his cousin, Fred Blakley, who is Mary's husband, of being the perpetrator of this crime. Michael's lawyer tried to introduce the following evidence about Fred Blakley to the jury to get Michael off the hook. Number 1. When Fred was 13 to 15 years old, he repeatedly molested Kerry Williams, his 6 or 7-year-old female cousin, for which he was adjudicated delinquent in juvenile court. Number 2. Fred had telephoned Kerry in 1999 and yelled at her. Number 3. Fred had a fight with Kerry's brother. Number 4. Fred had a history of cruelty to animals. Number 5. After a newspaper article indicated that a cousin of the defendant may have caused the baby's death, Kerry began receiving hang-up phone calls. Number 6. Fred had been molested as a young boy. Number 7. Fred was beaten by his father. Number 8. Fred's father died of AIDS. And number 9. Fred had engaged in self-mutilation. Now, of course, it is unlikely that Fred actually committed the murder of the baby in question, and this evidence was dismissed. However, the court did state the molestation committed by Fred was not similar to the sexual assault committed upon the baby, and we fail to see how telephone calls between Fred and his previous victim around the time of his cousin's arrest were relevant. So Mary's husband is a child molester, but probably not a baby killer. I don't know exactly what involvement Fred has in Mary's activities in the clinic, but he is wearing scrubs at the clinic opening. It's not just Mary and Fred who don't live up to the high standards of behavior people expect from medical professionals. Her front office staff managed to burn down their rented house after allowing other people to hook up a trailer and motorhome to the power supply. The owner of the house left a review on Yelp saying they'd left without discussing compensation. So where does all this leave us? Well, Mary Blakley is a fake doctor and a compulsive liar who might have been to federal prison, who definitely has a child-molesting husband and a terrible record of telling people they're healthy when they're sick, or otherwise scamming them out of money when they're desperate. I doubt people like Mary are really all that rare, and she's an example of the dangers people face when they decide to step outside of conventional medicine and into the unlicensed and unregulated hellhole that people like Chris Beat Cancer are so desperate to help them dig.
I'm one of the good guys.
So that's the end of this video. I hope it was interesting. If Mary or anyone associated with her wants to clearly explain what I've got wrong here, obviously I'll correct the video or delete it entirely. Please use the rating system and leave a comment telling me what kind of thing you actually want to see or how I can improve. These videos take me hours to make, and they're only going to keep getting made if people are watching and enjoying them. I'm going to finish with some wise words of advice from Carla Camarillo, smugly delivered in the film Cancer Can Be Killed.
You have to be a critical thinker. You have to think for yourself. You have to ask questions of everyone. Everything is money driven now. It's all about the money. Follow the money.